Hello, Cleveland, and welcome back to another edition of the DawgLand podcast. I am your host, Jackson McCurry. DawgLand contributor Katelin Marshall is joining me for this post-game edition of the podcast. Kay, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well, Jack. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hey, the Browns won. Hey, even if it's preseason, we'll take a Browns victory Sunday, victory Monday, anytime we can get it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we went through a lot of losing, so any win is a good win, in my opinion.
Oh, without a doubt. Before we get to the game, Friday got some bad news on the Browns in terms of the Browns. Jacob Phillips, one of the promising linebackers on this team, tore his bicep in the joint practice with the Giants on Thursday, and unfortunately, it looks like he's going to be out for the rest of the season. It's disappointing because Phillips, like, there was a lot of intrigue around him when we drafted him in the third round last year, and he dealt with injuries last year and was really inconsistent once he got on the field. But I think there was hopes coming into 2021 that he was going to take a step and be able to contribute to what I think is a deep linebacker room with Anthony Walker, with JOK, with Mac Wilson, with Taki. But it's unfortunate. Another injury hits him, and now he's going to miss out on the majority of his second year. What's your thoughts on the injury?
Yeah, it just sucks. I mean, Jacob Phillips was one of those guys where I thought that maybe not at the beginning of the year, but by week 9, 10, 11, he would be, your middle linebacker who kind of focus everything, around, especially when you only have Anthony Walker on a 1-year deal. And apparently, like, he was the main linebacker in sub packages. So it sucks because even being hurt last year, there were still some glimpses where, like, he'd run somebody down and you're just like, this guy plays with great instinct. He's a good tackler, which is just like, how do the Browns not, for all these years, just they don't draft good tacklers at linebacker?
Right.
This guy was actually good while also playing hurt majority of the year. And it just sucks. But I have a weird feeling that he'll try to be back at some point towards the end of the year, right? I mean, even though it's a pec tear, it sounded like, the way they were talking, like, yeah, we're gonna, we're not gonna put him on IR, because if they put him on IR before the 53-man cut down, he's not eligible to return. But I mean, like, who knows? Like, those injuries are weird, right? JJ Watt tore his, right, and he was back towards the end of the year or something like that.
Yeah, the way Schefter worded it, he said he was likely out for the season, but like you said, they're not going to put him on IR now, because if they do, he is out for the year. But if they wait,
and he was always going to make the 53 anyway, so it's not like he was going to count towards the, regardless.
Yeah, like, I think he was always going to be a roster lock. But like you said, he gets to the initial 53, then they put him on IR. There's a chance he could come back. But the way I read it was it's going to take like 4 to 6 months for it to heal. So you do the math. Okay. Yeah. See, like, that was the weird thing, the way Schefter reported it. And it was weird that he reported that, like, a backup linebacker for the Browns was out for the year. It's weird that he got that inside tip before everybody else. But saying that he's likely out for the year, I mean, he could come back towards the end of the season if we really needed him. But I feel like, as young as he is, as much potential as he still has, you don't want to rush him back. And I feel good about the depth we have at that position, that we don't need to rush him back. So, I mean, yeah, it is weird. Maybe he does come back. I don't bank on it. There is another thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to Phillips. There's this perception now, Kay. I don't know, you've probably seen it on Twitter, that all the LSU players are injury prone. And it talks about Jacob Phillips, talks about Grant Delbick, Greedy Williams, even Beckham and Landry. Like, now there's a perception that, oh, we can't touch LSU players because they're going to end up getting hurt and not be able to help us. And I just think it's a silly perception, because if it was Ohio State players, Browns fans wouldn't be making this perception. Or if it was Notre Dame or Alabama, one of these big schools, I don't think they'd make this perception. But since it's LSU and the Browns have 5 or 6 guys from that school, the perception's being made that they're an injury prone football team.
Yeah, I thought it was funny too. And I have a couple of people I follow on Twitter who are LSU fans, and they kind of said the opposite. They're like, what's in Ohio's water for all of our guys who go there to get hurt? And I was like, that's funny because it's like LSU. It's this weird like LSU and the Browns have this, and Ohio have this like connection, right? Especially with now in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. And obviously the Saints, all they do is draft Ohio State guys, and they seem to be fine. So yeah, it's weird. I just think it's a weird coincidence. I don't really see anything of it. I mean, they're all freak injuries, right? Like Jacob Phillips, he just reached and that's what happened, you know. Grant Delpit Achilles injury, like
And now the hamstring.
and now the hamstring. Greedy Williams. I mean, who would have thought last year it was, hey, Greedy's gonna miss a couple days of practice, and it's like, oh, it's a nerve issue. Like this is weirdly serious. You know what I mean? So
yeah, like if they're just freak injuries. Like if it was like, well, granted, Grant Delpit's was the Achilles injury, but everybody else is just soft tissue injuries. Like they're not like major injuries. I just think it's like silly that like people have these like hot takes like, oh, we're never drafting LSU players again. Well, no, because they produce some pretty damn good talented players. So it's like you had to take the chance on with injuries like that, and they're not major injuries. So I just think the perception is so silly. So let's get to the game. These preseason games do kind of bore me, but there was some good takeaways to take from this today. The Browns won 17-13, so they're 2-0 on the preseason now. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. I think the biggest takeaway from me was the versatility that we have with all these guys on the second and third stringers. The two ones that come to mind immediately, Demetric Felton, who we saw primarily in the backfield today. And he looked good running the ball. I mean, the stats won't add up. He had 8 carries for 25 yards, but I thought he looked good. He even caught one out of the backfield. Love his versatility, what he can bring at both running back, wide receiver, and in the return game. And then Johnny Stanton. Everybody's, a backup fullback who can play tight end, and he did it quite well. Couple catches when he was lined up as a tight end today. He looked good, and we're looking for a fourth tight end now with Steven Carlson off the roster with the knee injury, but you have options there now, and Johnny Stanton's definitely thrown his hat into the mix.
Yeah, definitely. Especially, I mean, talking about Demetric Felton, I mean, it was nice to see him get carries out of the backfield. I like that they ran out of shotgun, which I think they need to do more going into this year. And it's just like, get your playmakers the ball in unique ways. And I always thought that was, one of the things that that kind of like with all these weapons now, that's really the issue. It's like, let's just get our good players the ball. And, like someone like Felton, get him the ball out of the shotgun, get him on jet sweeps, get him just wherever, he's a shifty player. He's got speed and, to your point about Johnny Stanton, I mean, hell, last week we were like, well, could he be our fullback? Could they release Janovich? Yeah. And now it's just like, well, he can now play tight end a little bit. He could play backup fullback. So it's like, why not just, I mean, he played in a game last year. He knows the system really well. Why not? If you could sneak him on the roster, like, why not? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he's been in Stefanski's offense for 3 seasons now, dating back to the Vikings, yeah. Or actually 4 seasons. He was 2018 undrafted free agent. So he's very familiar with this system. I didn't realize how versatile he was as a football player. He was a quarterback at UNLV. Yeah. So I mean, he's a great football player. And, I'm giving him the nickname that Johnny Football made famous, or Johnny Manziel made famous. He's Johnny Football. Forget about Manziel. It's Stanton's nickname now, but yeah, I mean, he's definitely thrown his hat into the tight end 4 discussion. The other 2 tight ends played well today. I just love the versatility that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski are putting together with this roster, because we have so many different players on offense and defense that can contribute in a variety of ways, and it's going to catch defenses off guard and opposing offenses as well.
Yeah, they're going to have a lot of tough decisions when it comes to cutting down. The way Johnson ran the ball today, you can't not keep him on this team unless you could trade him and get like a mid-tier pick for him. The way he's been running, I just think it's too valuable to just to cut him. So it seems like he's a lock. And then this is where, like, okay, Demetric Felton, Is he your wide receiver 4 or running back 6? Like, they got to get creative, you know what I mean? And like someone we just saw catch a touchdown pass today, Cadell Hodge, like, is he on the outs? But like, he does everything well, you know, because it's like, okay, DPJ is going to be on the team. You would assume Higgins is going to be on the team. I mean, but that's kind of a weird thing where it's like you keep him on the team because he has this camaraderie with your quarterback, and all he does is produce when he's on the field. Obviously, you know, Landry and OBJ but it's just like this weird Anthony Schwartz who we've never even seen yet. He's going to be on the team, so it's just like they got to get creative, especially, you know, to keep guys like Johnson and Felton. And I mean, yeah, the fact that they're going to have all these guys that they're going to get picked up by other teams and I think play a significant role for their respective teams wherever they end up.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall for these discussions with Andrew Berry in the front office, Stefanski and the coaching staff, like when they're talking about Dearness Johnson, Demetric Felton, Kadero Hodge, Davion Davis. Now you got Stanton and Janovich, and you got these other 2 tight ends, Davis and Franks. Like, there is so many options. Like, I think we're going to see a couple trades before the final cut.
There would have to be, right? There would have to be.
Because you have guys like Davis that are making plays. Like, teams that need wide receiver help are probably going to be calling the Browns about him and Hodge, maybe even Rashard Higgins. I think Rashard Higgins is going to make this team, but if a team calls and says, hey, we'll give you a 4th or 5th round pick for him, I'm sure Barry and Stefanski will sit down and have that difficult discussion. Like, do we trade Higgins, even though this might, you know, cause a rift in the locker room, especially with our quarterback, or do you take what you can get? Do they feel like Davis and Hodge are better? I don't think they're thinking that. I feel like they think Higgins is the better option of the 3, but I'm sure they're having internal discussions about this. And then do you keep a fullback? Do you keep Janovich or Stanton and say, hey, you're going to be an H-back in this offense now, you're going to play some tight end as well? Or do they think Davis and Franks have done enough, especially how they performed today in the game, that they're good at tight end 4 and they just get rid of the fullbacks and keep both Johnson and Felton? So it's going to be tough decisions all around. Didn't think it'd be this tough, but it's good that they're at the back end of the roster and not like,
significant players, right?
Yeah.
Well, and even like, okay, quarterbacks, do you keep 2 or 3? Like, can you sneak Kyle Willetta on your practice squad? I mean, I think that's a significant question. The offensive line, that second team offensive line played really, really well.
They did.
And it's just like, you know, Blake Hand seems to have a lock on a roster spot as a backup. Drew Forbes played pretty well at times. I mean, Chris Hubbard, you have a lot of money wrapped up into him. But we also saw how valuable he was last year to us, being kind of like that Swiss Army knife. And it's just, you know, it's obviously James Hudson. You would expect your 4th round pick to be on the team. So it's just like, yeah, it'll be interesting. Definitely on the offense. And then we didn't even talk about the defensive side of the ball yet.
Right. We'll get to that. I'm glad you brought up the offensive line, because in the terms of versatility, I just wonder how safe Nick Harris is right now on this team, because he can only play center. Agree. He can only play center because when they threw him into guard last year in the Giants game, he struggled. Now he's out right now with a knee injury, but you have Michael Dunn, who's taken snaps at center during practice. Blake Hance played a lot of the game today at center. You know, you have Drew Forbes, who I don't know if can play center, but it seems like he can play tackle and guard, because I think he played tackle in college. The fact that Harris doesn't have any versatility to his game as an offensive lineman makes me wonder how safe he is, and how it's going to come down, I think, to what Bill Callahan wants. You know, we all kind of pegged Nick Harris to be the long-term center, granted, depending what they do with JC Treader after this year. But with the fact that you have Dunn and Hance and potentially Forbes that can all play different positions, and Chris Hubbard too, you know, that is going to be another tough decision. Are they willing to go with Hance or Dunn as the future center, or do they keep riding with Nick Harris? Because I do see the potential in Nick Harris to be the long-term center, but the fact that he can't, you know, move over like these other guys can and play well, I mean, that has to go in the decision.
Yeah, I wonder if Nick Harris is one of those guys that'll try to sneak on the practice squad. You know,
that could be,
because it's one of those things where he did have some tape last year. It wasn't great, obviously. But if they, can maybe continue to develop him, and you also got to think, he was a 5th-round pick for a reason. He's kind of undersized for a center. But they picked him because they kind of ran the same type of offense at Washington, the zone blocking scheme. So, maybe, but it's also like, hey, I mean, this is the nature of the NFL, right? You don't always get an opportunity, and when you do and you don't play well, I mean, that's what happens. So, and it sucks that he also got hurt, right? I believe he got hurt, and then he's on IR, which again, one opportunity, Blake Hands and Michael Dunn come in and they're playing a significant amount of snaps, and now Blake Hands is, I mean, all I read about Blake Hands is that Bill Callahan loves him, or was it Hands or Michael Dunn? It was one of those guys.
I think it was Dunn.
He just absolutely adores. So it's just like, okay, he's going to be on. And, the whole Wyatt Teller thing is a giant question mark. You have a lot of money in JC Treader and Joel Bitonio. I mean, you have difficult decisions to make eventually, but this is where you kind of project, project replacements almost. I mean, this is what every good football team has to do. I mean, it's weird being on the other side of the coin, so to speak, talking about like, hey, let's keep this guy because, we need an affordable, good player to fill in our system as a starter at some point. So.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, like I said, I would hate to be Andrew Berry and company right now because they are going to have.
It's got to be a good thing, right?
Oh yeah,
because that means your coaching staff is doing a great job developing these players, and that also means like if you had to let certain people go or trade people, then you have the confidence for them to bring in somebody with the same amount of skill set or whatever, and you could develop and coach those guys up into more to be starters and whatnot, and then the train just keeps on going. You know what I mean?
Without a doubt. Was there anybody else on offense that we didn't talk about that caught your eye today? Like you thought that played well or struggled and would need to have a good performance next week against Atlanta to make the team?
Not off the top of my head. It's just like crazy how many very solid weapons we have. Like we went years without having any wide receivers, and now like that Davis kid, he's good. He's really good. And, I wish we could, put him on the roster somewhere, but we just can't. It's just not practical. The same with Cadell Hodge. Like all he did was catch the ball last year, and he played well, and he might not even make the team. I think this game also, quieted the, Case Keenum can, all he could do is he's better than Baker, or he could play more efficiently than Baker, and then he's like given all the time in the world, and he throws like the worst interception I've ever seen.
Yeah, I would have liked to see the wide angle of that play because it just didn't make sense. Like he threw it and it just went right into
Quincy
Wilson.
To him. Yeah.
I just wonder if the wide receiver was out of place or he didn't see the other defensive back come over. Like I need to see that from a wide angle. Hopefully, our friend of show, Jake Burns, breaks it down to all 22 because that's going to be something that I really want to look at. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, this is my biggest thing. The biggest worry to me, Kay, on the roster right now is the defensive tackle room. Mm-hmm. Outside of Malik Jackson, because he's a solid pro. He's been good everywhere he went. I don't have a problem with him. I just have a problem with everybody else behind him. Now, I think Malik McDowell had a good day today, albeit it was against the backups, but he showed something. Now, see if he can build upon that next week against Atlanta. But I think Tommy Togiai is struggling right now. Andrew Billings has been a major disappointment since he came back to the team after he opted out last year. He just seems like he is getting pushed around, and that's like as big of a duty as strong of a dude as he is. I did not expect that from him. And then Marvin Wilson, haven't seen much out of him. Like the defensive tackle room is the position group that like worries me the most so far. And I just wonder if Andrew Berry and them have something in mind. Do they bring in another free agent like a Geno Atkins or somebody, or do they swing a trade? Because the depth of that position really worries me.
Yeah, outside of, like you said, Jackson and I think Sheldon Day, I think he's allowed to make this team at this point. But
he's been the most consistent for sure.
Yeah, but it's just like after those two guys, it's like obviously Togiai makes a team. He's a 4th-round pick, so you would think he gets the leg up. But then after that, I mean, as like you said, as big as Andrew Billings is, I mean, you just see 99 on your screen when they have the back view of like the defensive line. You're just like, this guy's huge, and like you said, he's getting pushed around a lot. Yeah, it's Jordan Elliott.
Jordan Elliott had a good day today.
He
He had
had
a
a good
nice
day.
sack, and
But it's also like, can he make that second year kind of step up? Again, former third round pick. I mean, you spent a significant draft pick, a third round pick on somebody, and a fourth round pick. You would hope they would make the team. I do wonder what the Billings thing is, right? Like, Bengals fans had, I would say, not favorable things talking about him out the door, kind of like the Browns and Larry Ogunjobi. And I feel like maybe it just ends up just being kind of like a wash. Like the Browns hyped up Andrew Billings maybe a little bit too much, kind of like Bengals fans hyped up Larry Ogunjobi, when in reality it's like, well, do you see him against the run? And then it's like Billings is kind of the opposite. But it's like, again, he's so big. It's weird, right? It's definitely weird.
Yes, I was in the OBR Discord during the game, and somebody compared Billings to Ted Washington when he was with the Browns in the mid 2000s on the end of his career. And I don't remember Washington being that good. And it just seems like what Billings is, but it just seems like we just made a swap, and we all thought we were getting the better player. Like Cincinnati thinks Ogunjobi is better than Billings. Mm-hmm. We think Billings is better than Ogunjobi, when in reality, like you said, it's just a wash.
It's a wash, and they're both just average, mediocre defensive tackles. But yeah, I would agree, because there's not a lot of depth at all, especially when you cut somebody like Sheldon Richardson, where you maybe didn't even have to do that, especially for this year.
Yeah, I mean, that thing.
It's a lot of money, right? It's a lot of money, but it's also like you're trying to win this year. So maybe it's one of those things where maybe you pay for the quality, even though he isn't the player he once was, but to pair him in a rotation with, Malik Jackson and Sheldon Day and, Jordan Elliott.
Right.
But
yeah, I'm very impressed with Sheldon Day. Like I said, he's been the most consistent, I think, out of the D tackle room. Aside from Malik Jackson, who we haven't obviously seen in game action, but from all accounts, he's been solid in practice and camp. So, but yeah, I mean, hopefully these guys step up. Like Jordan Elliott played better today. You just hope to see more out of Malik McDowell and Marvin Wilson, just because these were essentially 2 lottery tickets for us. And, McDowell played a good game. Just want to see him build upon it and have another strong game, obviously, as he's trying to make his comeback. We talked about, Phillips going down, and I thought like Elijah Lee, and he got hurt and he came back in the game.
He came back. Yeah.
I thought he played well. I thought Willie Harvey played well for, being signed 2 days ago, just off the street. Obviously the top of the linebacker room is set, but we do need a little depth. And Elijah Lee has always been solid on special teams, but it feels good when like your 5th or 6th linebackers can come in and be productive. Obviously in spot situations, obviously with injuries. And it was a shame because Montrell Meander, who was with the team in camp, was one of the first cuts and then brought back because of the Phillips injury. And from all accounts, it sounds like an Achilles injury happened today, which
damn.
I knew right away it was something bad because he was hobbling right after the play. And then when they pulled the card out, I mean, that just kind of tells you it's not good news. So what do you think about the linebacker room?
Yeah, I mean, it's, again, that's always will be the question mark of this team. It's, you have Anthony Walker, who's just a solid veteran, linebacker. Same thing with Malcolm Smith. Like, what you're going to get with him, but you also don't want Malcolm Smith to be your second leading tackler like he was last year for us. JOK didn't really play a lot, but, I think they kind of know what they have in him. So you just kind of want to get him healthy, especially with, the amount of injuries at your linebacker position. We saw Mac Wilson play a ton. I mean, he played well into the 4th quarter. He's one of those guys who's kind of vying for a roster spot. But yeah, I thought, Elijah Lee played pretty well. Again, if you play special teams, you're going to be able to get a spot on this team. And did Taki play?
No.
I thought no, he didn't play. So
if he played, I don't remember seeing him, but he didn't record any stats. So if he played, he didn't play much like JOK.
So, yeah, I didn't really see. Again, it was weird. Everybody was in pads, so it was just like, did this guy play? Did they sneak in for a little bit?
I needed to talk about that because like the one shot from the sideline and Myles Garrett and Clowney, they were all in pads, and I'm like, why are they in pads? They're not playing. But then I guess I heard him. I think it was Joe Thomas said like Baker and Odell, like everybody got their work in and they were all in uniform,
Mhm.
which I think is a good thing because a lot of
Yeah.
these guys just come in and just, chill out on the sidelines. If you watch Hard Knocks, you see like Ezekiel Elliott just like destroying a bag of sunflower seeds. But the fact that they come in and they still put in the work and like support their teammates through the entire game, I think that's, that's great. And that's obviously the tone Coach Stefanski sets.
And I think that also means that they probably won't be playing next Sunday either.
No.
There's no reason for it, I don't think.
Not at all. But but yeah. The secondary, I thought AJ Green played well today. I thought Richard LeCount.
Yeah.
If he's healthy, I think the Browns got a steal in the fifth or sixth round?
Yeah, fifth or sixth round.
Which seems to be,
I think.
Like Barry and D Podesta and these guys have been killing it in the late round picks so far with Donovan Peoples-Jones, LeCount, Felton. I mean, but like LeCount's all over the place. He's playing the role, and like I've heard Jake Burns say this right away, and I went back and watched, and like I could see it. He's playing the role that Jabril Peppers was playing in Greg Williams' defense, but it's like the fact that we have talent surrounding in that secondary. It's like LeCount can be a star in that role. And unfortunately, Peppers couldn't do that when he was in Cleveland because we didn't have anybody else surrounding him until Denzel Ward came along. But, LeCount is playing that center field safety role perfectly, and he's been very impressive so far.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's funny because when you see like Richard LeCount and then you see like how he tested awful. But then you read into things like, well, he was hurt. There's the car accident or motorcycle accident. So he was still kind of banged up when he did all his 40s and stuff. And, that's where, your normal scouting does justice. You know what I mean? I mean, this guy was a two-time team captain at Georgia, led the team in interceptions. I mean, I believe like all SEC type players. So I mean, he's a stud. And again, it's one of those guys where maybe he didn't produce, even though he played well at Georgia, maybe he didn't produce as like his potential did. Kind of like Donovan Peoples-Jones, where it's like this guy was a 5-star recruit for a reason, and they just didn't develop him. And now we see that like this dude has the opportunity to be a legitimate lead player in the NFL.
Yeah, I feel really good about him. Hopefully, like, being around, John Johnson III, even like Denzel Ward, Troy Hill, like the veterans in the secondary, like
Troy Hill, who played today.
Yes. Oh yeah. Troy Hill
played well into the second quarter too.
And Coach Stefanski wouldn't comment on it, but we all know for that fight or whatever it was, they said it wasn't real, but yeah, he definitely got punished for doing that against I think it was Sterling Shepard on Friday. So yeah, it wasn't a surprise when we seen 23 out there, but yeah, I mean, LeCount being surrounded by all those veterans, I mean, that's going to be very good for his development as well. So hopefully he fills into that Sheldrick Redwine role for like the first year where he plays special teams, and maybe he gets some snaps back there. But then, depending on what happens with Ronnie Harrison, LeCount could be, I'm not going to like put it in concrete, but he could be the third safety of this defense going forward into 2022.
Oh yeah, no doubt at all.
Robert Jackson,
I was just gonna say the one bad thing was Robert Jackson. I was waiting to be negative.
Oh yeah. I mean, God love him. I mean, he's trying, but he's not making this team. There is no way.
The fact that he was the starting corner opposite of Terrence Mitchell in a playoff game that they won. Yeah. I mean, that is just, it's incredible. Maybe I was a little too harsh on Joe Woods, that the fact that like he had Robert Jackson in a playoff game starting, and they're just like, hey, just keep everything in front of you, because when we see like he's lined up man to man, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's very tough.
And the penalty, like it was
to get two on the same play. Oh,
I think that
he got a face mask that resulted in the pass interference. Like, yikes, that's like a quadruple negative on that play.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think he's
on a 2-point conversion.
He's probably getting his pink slip like tomorrow or Tuesday when they do the next wave of cut downs. But
yeah.
Any other defensive takeaways? Like I
thought Joe Jackson played really well.
I was actually going to bring him up too.
I think he's somebody who's going to make the rotation, even if Takk McKinley, comes back. I mean, that's still a weird situation. And if it's, personal reasons, you just kind of have to let it be.
And hopefully he's
Um,
okay.
yeah, and that definitely that's the main
That
thing
is, yeah.
for any, and hope that he's good. And whenever, because it sounds like the Browns are like, hey, like, take your time, and whenever you come back is when you come back, if you come back. And but yeah, like, talk about an opportunity. No Porter Gustin playing because he was banged up, and Joe Jackson played majority of the snaps this game, and he played extremely well throughout the entire game. So I think he's definitely somebody. Curtis Weaver had a sack late in the game. I mean, those are the guys where it's like you got to learn these names because you never know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like Curtis Weaver was like the top guy I was going to watch today, just because last week he was really quiet. He did have a couple pressures. I think he did have a sack too. Hope to see more, because behind Miles and Clowney, I mean, you have Joe Jackson, you have Porter Gustin, and then you have Malveaux and Weaver, and they're all fighting for roster spots too. I mean, next week against Atlanta, it's going to be very crucial for Weaver, for Malveaux, and who knows, Joe Jackson might not be safe yet. He might need to go out and play another solid game against Atlanta to like secure his spot on the roster. But like you said, I would probably put him as edge number 5 behind Miles, Clowney, McKinley, and Porter Gustin right now, if I had to put together the 53-man roster.
Yep.
And, last thing, I seen Coach Stefanski say Cody Parkey has a quad injury right now. And I thought, McLaughlin making that 50-yard field goal today, I think that solidified his spot. Now, it might actually solidify his spot if Parkey's injury keeps him out of next week's game against Atlanta. But I always thought, like, so far that McLaughlin had the edge in the kicking battle for sure.
Yeah, and if Parkey's out, like, for a significant amount of time, I mean, you can't. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, all McLaughlin's done is make his kicks. It's from everything I've read throughout training camp, and we know Parkey's Parkey. He's really good within like 41. Anything out of that, it's just like it's a question mark. But yeah, if you could consistently nail, like, 50-yard field goals, and obviously, it's ideal kicking situations, like it's sunny, it's really warm. Can you make those kicks in November and December? We will see. But I mean, hey, even if he struggles, you still release Parkey. Nobody's probably going to grab him while he's injured. So when he gets healthy, maybe you bring him back. I don't know if that's somebody you can slip on the IR for, your 53-man cut down. But why would you have 2 kickers then? Because that also, like, leaves McLaughlin up to maybe get picked up by another team that has struggling second, special team. So it's like, yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I didn't know the Parkey injury, but yeah, because didn't he kick an extra point?
He did
today,
and I'm guessing that's when he suffered.
Must have been,
unless he did he do kickoffs at all today? I know McLaughlin did the opener, and then I don't remember.
Right. I didn't notice that. I thought he kicked the extra point, which I was like, okay, 2, all right, Parkey. But yeah, if he's hurt, then yeah, he's probably on the outs.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's unfortunate that an injury has to make that decision for the Browns. But But yeah, I did think McLaughlin was going to be the kicker coming out of camp. Anyways, last thing, how great were Hawkins and Joe Thomas today on the call?
Oh, they were awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed them, very much so. Hawkins is so good.
Oh God, he's so good.
He's so good. He's so entertaining, and there's obviously the chemistry from the Tomahawk show, but yeah, Andrew Hawkins is by far, like, he should be somebody who gets Monday Night Football consideration, because I would watch Andrew Hawkins talk about.
Oh, both of them should be.
Yeah, definitely. But I think what's great about Andrew Hawkins is he can relate to every player. He's been that bubble guy who's playing in the second and third preseason games that nobody wants to play in. That Joe Thomas was just like, yeah, I've been through those and it's awful, right? He was just openly mocking, and Andrew Hawkins was like, well, I've played in many of these, and but he's also been the guy that the veteran who was paid a lot of money in the off season and was a lot to make the team. So I think he gives a great perspective, especially in these preseason games, for both players. The bubble guys who, like I said, have to play in these games, who aren't just playing for, their respective teams, but playing for all the other 31 teams to make their rosters potentially. And I just think I just thought they were both really, really good.
Without a doubt. I loved when Hawkins was like, the last time we were teammates, we were 1-15. So kudos to the Browns for bringing us back to see what a real team looks like.
Yeah.
Like the one-liners today were just classic out of Hawkins.
Yeah, they said no wonder we went 1-15. They had 2 broadcasters as their top 2 players.
Yeah.
Or
and
something to that effect.
Yeah. And then, Joe Thomas was like sweating profusely up in the announcer booth. Oh my God. That was like, it was bad. He goes, I bet I'm sweating more than Myles Garrett right now. And he's sitting on the sideline. They were great. And then I think the other guy, Tom McCarthy, he does a good job as well, but obviously he got overshadowed by Tomahawk today. They asked him about the wide receiver room. I think when Hawkins was here, he goes, well, we weren't very good at catching the ball, but we made up for it by not being able to get open.
Yeah.
And that was just like the 2016 Browns in a nutshell.
It really was.
Yeah.
Which is crazy that, Higgins is still there. Barely. I mean, not barely, but he's still there, right?
And that's crazy because they like cut him twice during that span too.
Yeah.
And then brought him back for the Pittsburgh game and he had like 2 touchdowns. And it was like, why?
Yeah, and then the year after, he didn't even make the initial 53. He was on the practice squad. Week 2, they bring him up for the Ravens game. Yeah. And he has like 10 catches, 95 yards with Deshaun Kaiser throwing him the ball. And it was just one of those things where it's like, yeah, like he's around. It's weird. Higgins he's a weird.
He's
like,
on the
looking at his career arc. He's a weird guy, and eventually he's going to get paid by somebody. And I kind of hope it's in Cleveland to be, that, number 2, number 3 receiver, maybe taking the place of Landry. But I just like, he's one of those guys where you look at journeyman to be a journeyman player for one team. That's kind of weird. Yeah.
He's kind of on that Andrew Hawkins career path.
Yeah.
Except he's only been on one team. Like Hawkins was on the Bengals and then he was on the Browns. Then he had that little brief stint with the Patriots before he retired, but he was never like he was the number 1 guy with the Browns on like one of the worst football teams ever, but he was always that number 2, number 3 guy that was solid, which is much like Rashard Higgins. So yeah. So in like 10 years, Rashard Higgins will be calling Browns preseason games.
Again, they're both hella entertaining.
Yes.
Like imagine Rashard Higgins in the booth. That'd be awesome.
Yes, without a doubt, he's got the swagger. Obviously, I mean, anytime you
he has that one liner that's like if it like something about calling God, and if you don't pick up, call me or something.
Right.
How we're both reliable, and I was just like, oh my God, because he said it when he had the interview with Nathan and Ken on the Browns YouTube channel, and I was like, he said that a few times, and it's just like it's hilarious that like. That one liner, I absolutely love it.
Without question. All right, Kay, thanks so much for doing this because Anthony had to work, so I needed to find someone else to do post game with. So I really appreciate you. Go ahead and plug your podcast because you got like a million of them as well. So and then plug your Twitter.
Actually, I only have 2. I only have 2.
It
right
seems
now.
Like you have so much more.
I know. So Crunch Time with Katelin, a lot of Brown stuff. NFL stuff, on the horizon. I usually do like 3 episodes a week during the season. So check that out. It's Crunch Time with Katelin, like crunch, and it starts with a K. And then if you're a fan of baseball, I have a baseball podcast with my good friend Gabe, and which is called Lead Off Talk, a baseball podcast. You can find that wherever you listen to your podcast. It's a weekly baseball podcast, and it's a lot of fun. And you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow all that stuff. But follow me on Twitter at Katelin No CLE. That is Katelin, Katelan Knows KNOWS, and then CLE.
I've been on both of her podcasts. I will say she does great work. So definitely check them out if you haven't already.
I appreciate that.
Always. As for me, you guys can follow me on Twitter at JackMcCurry08. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at the DawgLand, as well as on Facebook. Just search the DawgLand, and we're available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back later this week, talk about the latest round of roster cuts and any other news that comes out of Berea as pertains to the Browns. And until next time, as always, go Browns.